right, here we are, talk three. And so, if you're still with me, thank you. Thank you for taking the time to listen and think through and really process some of the stuff that I'm sharing. Because I think it's good to chew on a lot of different questions and ideas that might come from a lot of different people. And I think God is big enough to wade through all of that. Um, last talk I briefly mentioned about this health, like some health stuff, right? That like for me, the biggest thing, at least recently, that I had to work through that was really painful was this appendicitis that I had, and I forget what year it was. It wasn't too long ago, but I remember that it was the year that the Falcons played the Patriots in the Super Bowl, because this is why I remember that, because the day before the Super Bowl, I woke up with this like pain in my stomach that I hadn't felt ever before, and it just wouldn't go away. Like it woke me up at like 3 in the morning, and then I just couldn't go back to sleep, or I was in and out of sleep because this pain kept coming in and out, and I knew something was wrong. I knew something was wrong, and so throughout the day, I'm just like laying around and I'm like moaning. And, my wife just had like my son, right? And so she had just given birth to the kid. And so it's not like she's getting much sleep and she's having the best time of her life. And because, having a newborn is really tough, right? And so she's worrying about all that, and then there's what she sees as this lazy husband who's lying around moaning and groaning and not sucking it up, while she just gave birth to a child and is trying to feed him and make sure then our daughter is taken care of. And again, I'm just probably looking lazy. And so I'm like, I don't want to set her off. And I'm trying to, suck it up and hold it in and let it pass, but it just wouldn't leave. And so I called my doctor friend up and I'm like, hey man, so I'm feeling this thing. Like, is this appendicitis? And he's like, yeah, it's really hard to say. You really probably have to go in to check it out. But I'm like, here's the thing. Like, I can't go. Like, if this is like gas and I'm hurting, like, and I go to the hospital and they tell me it's gas and I come back and my wife has had to watch the kids for like who knows how many hours by herself, all to find out that I just had gas, like, that's not gonna be good. And he's like, I don't know what to tell you, man. And I go, okay, all right, I'll try to hold off a little bit. So I hold off for a couple more hours, and my wife knows that I've already called my friend, and she's like, what did he say? I was like, he said it's hard to tell. It could be appendicitis, but I would have to go in. And she's like, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, I think I should go in. And she goes, well, do what you got to do. And I'm like, oh man, that's really insensitive. Like, I'm really in pain. Well, how can you possibly say do what you got to do? And so I jumped in my car and I drove myself to the hospital. And I go to the ER and I tell them what's going on. And they're like, well, they told me exactly what my friend said. You got to go get it checked. We got to check it out. And I'm like, but is it gas? They're like, we don't know. I'm like, doc, I really need this to be appendicitis. And I'm sure this is the first time he's had anybody tell him, I need this pain to be appendicitis. And so we go and I get tested, I get scanned, and I come back, and the doctor, he knows what I want. He knows that I want him to say that I have appendicitis. And he comes in and goes, I got some bad news. And I'm like, shoot. Dang it, it's gas, and I gotta go home and tell my wife it was gas. And he says, you're gonna have to go into surgery. I'm like, yes! Yes! Doc! Yes! This is the best news! And he just was like, you're so weird. You're so weird. But anyways, like, I'll, fine. So I'll draw up, I'll get you all set up. You'll go into surgery, and you can call your wife to tell her what's going on. And, I called my wife and I'm like, guess what? And she just starts laughing, and she actually then felt bad. And I go into the operating room, and they're all, setting me up to get operated on. And I'm just like, yes, I'm like, this is awesome. And, they hit me up with, anesthesia so I fall asleep. And I remember, like, this is how ridiculous I am. Like, this is how ridiculous I am. Like, I remember, they tell you to count down, And I've been under before for procedures, and I know how it works. Like, they tell you to count down from 10, but I don't even think I've hit 8. Like, I knock out that fast. And so I knew that I was like, I'm going to be out like that. And the minute that they said count down, like, all the nurses are there, right? It's just all women. And instead of counting down, I just said, later, ladies, because I knew I'd be out. And so, like, that's a lot. I don't know why in my head that's what I would want to say as my last thing. Like, those could have been my last words, but in that moment I was just like, later, ladies, and boom, darkness. Like, I don't remember anything. Why do I share that story? I share it because, again, I'm an idiot. Like, I'm an absolute idiot, and I do things that don't make sense sometimes, and sometimes super immature. One of the reasons why, though, I think I wanted to share that, though, is because it goes back to pain, right? Like, there was something wrong in my body that told me I couldn't ignore it. And in that instance, like, imagine that if there was something going wrong in your body, but there was no pain, there weren't any signals to let you know that there was something wrong. Like, that would end up really bad. That would end up really bad. So pain sometimes seems to serve a purpose, right? Not that it's good, but it lets you know when something is wrong, right? It lets you know something is wrong. And I've thought a lot about that since having appendicitis. And because if I didn't have pain and that thing blew up in my guts, I wouldn't be here today. I had to address that pain. Something was wrong and I had to address it. And I think when we look at Jesus and all that he did and all that he does and all that he says, what we find is that Jesus is bringing attention to what's wrong. Like, he's uncovering and bringing voice to all the pain that's out there. And he's saying this needs to be addressed, because if this isn't addressed, then there's going to be a lot of suffering. And I'm here to tell you that I'm here to help, that I'm here along with all of you, right? But my goal is to be with those that are in pain. I'm here to be with those, again, the same theme that I've been talking about, those that are on the outside, because they're the ones screaming, but nobody's paying attention. They're the ones screaming and nobody's paying attention. And this isn't just like physical issues, right? Bodily issues. Jesus brings attention to systemic issues that are out there, where people are hurting and suffering. And the God of the universe is saying, that's not okay. And I'm here for that. For me, I come from immigrant parents, right? My parents are from Korea. And my dad especially comes from a time when there was no North and South. It was just one country. But what happened, though, is when he was about 5, in Korea, a war broke out. And there were religious freedoms that if they were stuck in a certain part, that they would no longer have religious freedoms. And my grandfather knew that. And so he picked up his entire family, and they started walking. They started walking as far as they could so that they could find refuge, that they could be in a safe place where they wouldn't be punished for what they believe. And, and so the story in the family is that my grandfather held my dad in one hand and had a Bible in his other, and they walked, and they saw unimaginable devastation. They saw unimaginable horror and loss as they walked and tried to find safety. And stories like that, though, they're not just of the past. that's happening today. In some ways, my family, I come from a refugee family in some ways, right? Where you leave everything behind and you get displaced and you have to go and find safety, and you have to go where it wasn't home before, but you're trying to make a new home in a new place. And thankfully they did. Thankfully they did. And I wouldn't be here if my grandfather wasn't brave enough to do that. And I wouldn't be here if where they fled to, the southern part of Korea, didn't accept them and welcome them. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for that. And time and time again, I see God in the story and life of Jesus and the works of Jesus, speaking to people like me and my family, right? Those that could be told to go away, those that could be told this isn't the place for you, but where we are brought in, and welcomed, so that we too could experience life in all its abundance and love that's afforded to every single person in this world, and that it should be. And so I just want everybody to know. That if you ever hear God and Jesus being used in a way that says that other people can't be in God's family, that we shouldn't care for those that are needing help. If you ever hear God and Jesus being used in a way that shuts people out, I think we're missing the whole point of God. I think we're missing the whole point of the message of Jesus. Because when Jesus' message was so radical, it was so crazy to some people. I think more so than his claim that he was God, or the thought that he was God. I think what got people angry more is actually his message of inclusion and bringing everybody in. I think that's what got people angry, because that was disrupting the system. And because of that, they put Jesus on a cross and murdered him, saying we can't have this message any longer. But what's crazy about it is that when, like, God is bigger than just a body, right? And we see that in Jesus, because Jesus didn't stay dead when he died. He rose again, right? Like, God is bigger than death. And these people thought that they could just kill Jesus, and that message of inclusion and acceptance and love would go away along with that. But what we find is that God transcends all of that. God transcends all of that. And because this, like, love is so powerful, and love is so deep in how we are wired, and that we all, like, I feel like God is always pulling humanity towards love. And because of Jesus' message is so crazy with this idea of love and what it means, it started a movement. It started a movement, and the message and hope of Jesus started moving like wildfire, right? And it's come all the way 2,000 years later, and here we are still talking about this crazy message of Jesus of love, right? And when we try to enact love and be the arms and hands and feet of Jesus and God so that we could help do the work of God, that requires us to see pain in the world. That requires us not to be blind to the injustices of the world, because that's exactly what Jesus came to confront. And so what's so cool and great about the message of God is that we don't have to wait. Jesus always said that the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God is at hand. And we can partner with Jesus and God in helping bring that kingdom here, where we are now. Like Jesus said this. And how do we do that? It's not by just sitting around. It's by identifying where pain is and calling attention to that pain so that that is healed. And how do we do that? We open our eyes and look around us to see who's hurting. Speak up for them. Give them a voice. Center them. How do we do that? We look at systems that are oppressing others, and we confront those systems in saying justice needs to be done here. That's the message of Jesus. That's the message of God. And you guys all have the ability to do that. Now, I can't do all that on my own. No one person can do that on their own. But we collectively can come together and do that together. We collectively can do that together, right? And the message of Jesus isn't always about you. It's not always about me. There's a larger picture to this, and that larger picture is about us as a people. What can we do together to bring other people up so that we can all experience life the way that it was supposed to be? Abundant and full of love, full of care. And I don't know what that means for you. I don't know what that means for you. But I think a good place to start is to examine it yourself. Identify the pain. Identify your own pain. Don't ignore that. Don't ignore that. And find a way, how can you best address that pain? How does God enter into that pain? Recognize that God is there with you in that. But also become aware of the pain around you and others as individuals and as collective bodies, and help restore that to the way that it was supposed to be. And the way that it was supposed to be is a loving community for all. So I know a lot to chew on, but I just want you guys to know that the God of this universe is for you. The God of this universe is for me. And whenever we have a chance to elevate the voices and experiences and stories of those that go unheard and unseen, that's the easiest place for us to begin in partnering with God to do God's work.